Welcome to Module 1. They say electrical silence is the loudest kind of silence ever, and I think what we're about to hear is going to spark quite a lot of fear across the community. It has come to my attention that at this point there is a media release that has occurred, and there is a media report that we should be able to tune into live right away. It'll pop up on your screens. Please tune in and join with me.
Good morning, I'm Roshan Khan with ODTN News. Alberta's power grid operator is investigating what it calls an anomalous oscillation that forced British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Montana to disconnect from Alberta to contain the disturbance. In a statement, the Alberta Electric System Operator, also known as AESO, said the move was precautionary and meant to prevent the anomaly from spreading. Officials maintain the grid remains resilient and that power to homes and industries has not been significantly affected, adding that crews are working around the clock to stabilize the system. Energy experts, however, warn the grid is most resilient when connected to the Western Interconnect. They call the isolation of Alberta highly unusual and say it leaves the province vulnerable to outages, suggesting there may be more to this than a routine technical issue. AESO says engineers are manually reviewing telemetry data from all generation sites to pinpoint the source and will issue an update once the analysis is complete. Authorities continue to urge calm, stressing that the separation is controlled and temporary. But with questions mounting, many are watching to see whether this was a simple fault or the first sign of something larger. I'm Roshan Khan with ODTN News. Please follow along for more updates on this critical story.
Now, to the best of my knowledge, CyberX Power Co. is a tech titan within the Alberta ecosystem. They've been playing in the renewable energy space for quite some time, and if I'm not mistaken, have also acquired multiple AI data centers in the region. An issue with CyberX Power Co. can have significant issues spread not just within the province, but as you saw, across multiple other jurisdictions as well. Alex, I'm going to have to turn to you because listening to this report, the words unusual strike me as very, very problematic. Can you tell our audience and everybody here a little bit more about CyberX Power Co? And more importantly, we've seen certain terms used like interconnects. We've seen references to AESO. Can you take some time to give us a little bit more on the context?
Yeah, absolutely. So, CyberX Power Co. again spun up out of the 2008 financial crisis. They started buying up solar farms, wind farms, and then more recently have started buying up data centers, converting them over to AI data centers. That requires a lot of electricity, as you can imagine. They've also invested in AI-driven smart inverters to help convert the DC power onto grid AC power, and also the power management systems of the data center. Now, let's talk a little bit about the technology of power grids. And I do need to preface, I am not an electrical engineer, and at the risk of aging myself, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. So a lot of people think of the grid as this thing that has electricity in it, and it sparks and whatnot. But the grid is actually very kinetic. It's very physical. And the sense of the grid being synchronized means that, for the most part, most power generation is boiling water, converting it to steam, spinning turbines, spinning generators, producing electricity. Well, those turbines and those generators are hundreds, if not thousands of tons of spinning metal that are coupled magnetically across the grid. So every power plant right now is spinning with themselves, and that results in the alternating current, a push and a pull on the grid. So A synchronization issue on the grid can cause problems, physical problems, both in heavy industry, but also could result in a generator, in the most extreme case, becoming a motor, because the grid power is pushing against a 100,000 ton piece of metal. So that's really where grid management and grid operators need to make sure that the grid stays very stable. Now, as alluded to, there are different grid interconnects. There's the Western, there's the Eastern, and then there's Texas, as you probably heard. And from within there is smaller groups that they call reliability coordination. So AESO or ISO is Alberta's regional coordinator that makes sure that power generation and consumption stay in balance. You're probably aware that power is produced immediately and consumed immediately. So you can't over provision or without causing issues, and you can't under provision without causing issues. In many cases, there are private sector power generation companies like CyberX Power Co. that make money by generating power, and they work and coordinate with the grid operators to know how much power they are allowed to put on the grid at any given time. Now, in the event of, or with solar particularly, but even with wind, they need a device called an inverter to convert that power onto grid compatible electricity. And those inverters actually have to synthesize that push and pull, because they don't have the hundreds of tons of metal spinning around to create that actual inertia. So these smart inverters actually have an algorithm to help produce when to push power, when to pull power, to synchronize with the grid. And that's going to be an interesting challenge that we're going to have to come across.
Alex, I appreciate that, but and that's a lot of detail just as context to the audience. But Paul, I have to come to you. There's a lot of panic right now in the office with this report. Nobody was expecting it. And I will, if I can just take a moment for everybody that's watching online and on the screens, as we're using some of these terms like AESO, you'll see the definition breakdown coming up as well. And if you need us to explain something in a little bit more depth, please just let us know. Paul, I am concerned with this because the word that was used, and I've noted it down, is anomalous oscillation in the grid. Yet, from the ICS cybersecurity team, we've not heard anything at this point of time. Are you waiting on some logs? Is this a time where maybe you'll have to connect with the SOC? We've not heard anything from our team, and the media report is the first that we're hearing of this.
Absolutely. So yeah, this is the first time. Everything looks normal from our side. We're waiting to hear back from the SOC to see if any logs came through. So the equipment that we're using provides, nominal log telemetry backup. However, we need to dig deeper into it to see if there's any sort of command push down or if there's anything that's being exfilled out that we haven't noticed. So we have to do a little bit more forensics on it.
Thank you. It is concerning, and Vivek, as leading the board at this point, the board has already started reaching out. I believe you have heard from us that AESO, and this was a message that was sent to you, AESO is investigating and downplaying the incident at this point. But from a board's perspective, there seems to be quite a lot of concern right now. Vivek?
Yes, as the media started communicating these stories, you can imagine phone calls started escalating left, right, and center. The board knows that there have been operational impacts in the past, so they're wanting to hear updates about the extent of the impacts, wanting to hear any confirmations of critical services that might be impacted, and also hear if the sensors and management systems are operating properly. But at this point, they're on standby. I know you've got a good comms team to handle the media, but I think that we should be drafting an update to the board just to say they've got this, who's point on this. I imagine the CTO is going to be point on this, and I'm sure we'll hear from him soon. And so at that point, they're just waiting for that update to tell them somebody's running with this and things are being confirmed.
All right, well, before I get our industry experts into the discussion, if I can look towards our SOC team there, Alex and Shrey. If you have something to show us on your screens roundabout now, if you can just give us a bit of a sense of perhaps the inverters that we're dealing with and the scenarios that we face right now. If your screen can pop up very shortly, are you able to walk us through?
Absolutely, Eddie. We have initiated our initial investigation. The logic is everything looks healthy so far from a SOC perspective. There are service disruptions, that is true, but as you can see on the screen, the grid frequency is nominal range. The fleet health is pretty healthy. We are still above the baseline. That's what I'm going to say at the moment. This morning, this pretty early in the day, we have seen certain disruptions back in the time as well, but nothing out of normal nature at the moment. The real-time telemetry, however, it created a spike at 8:47, which we are investigating at the moment. The logs previously, they did inform about a firmware update which was made a little bit earlier in the day. As you can see on the screen, it may be a little bit smaller. Let me zoom in. The firmware update, which was completed successfully by 7:30, and by 8:47, the first abnormal frequency spike was detected. There is a grid deviation over here, which
So
has
I do have a
caused-
question. I'm sorry, SOC team. When this was detected, clearly the CISO or ICS team was not made aware,
Right.
and no alerts went through.
Right.
And this is a moment, this is something we have spoken about, that these alerts and anomalies must be escalated almost immediately.
Absolutely, but we have to classify them as false positives or true. We cannot just spread rumors around asking about logs. There may be a possibility that this may not be true entirely. The firmware update was authorized, it was legitimate. However, once we have the final word from my analyst and investigators, we'll provide an update.
I'll
John?
provide a little bit more context here. So CyberX PowerCo is going to get a lot of telemetry off of their power management systems. They send that telemetry up to the grid operator. However, that telemetry is sometimes not in real time. Sometimes it's a poll, sometimes it's minutes, even tens of minutes in between. The grid operator is looking at the bird's eye view. They're actually receiving pretty good reports of everything is fine, everything is stable, while they're still their secondary monitoring systems are observing this oscillation. Within CyberX PowerCo's operations team, we are starting to notice some anomalies that are on our alternative monitoring
Alex, I'm going to have to pause you over there because we're now seeing, and maybe Jean-François, if I can bring you into the equation, AESO has just instructed all PowerCos to do a manual review. Is this something that should be a cause for concern? Because the initial discussion, which was playing down the event, is now triggering responses where we're being told you have to manually review your logs and manually review your environment. Is this a cause for concern right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. At this point, we want to better understand what happened. I'd be curious to ask the grid before the spike or the oscillation that caused the disconnection from our neighbors, if anything was observed like half an hour just previous to that, because that could give us a clue. And I believe the spike that we saw was just before, maybe having confirmation, so I understand the scenario. That spike happened just before the disconnection, right?
Based off of the news reports from and that was shared from ISO, the Alberta section has been isolated from its neighbors. That was their decision, not Alberta's, but it was because an oscillation was observed coming from Alberta and they wanted to isolate it. ISO is investigating that, but they're struggling right now that all data that they're seeing is saying a nominal state. Like I said, there is a problem with real-time data with this, and interesting fact is that they don't actually have a real-time visibility of their grid at any given time. In fact, what they have is, for lack of a better description, they have a sim for power grids that collects a bunch of data and then does an estimated state to try to understand how the grid is, how healthy it is, but it's actually not that accurate. It's much more of a state. They'll also have another system that will start running through scenarios that if it loses more generation capacity or if a demand increase happens, what does it do? And that's a contingency system that is operating right now.
Sorry
However,
to
it's trusting
interrupt
on it.
there. Where is the CTO? Like, this is a major operational situation, and the board was expecting an update from the CTO. Where is he?
Very, look, I can chime in. You can see to the left of me, we have a seat for the CTO, but CTO is not here. Whether it's traffic, whether it's a holiday, I do know that we had updated our human resourcing system where people put in vacations. That had an issue this morning. So I don't know what's going on, but I don't have a CTO to deal with right now. And I can't reach him. So I'm in that situation. Alex, help me out here, man.
Well, we will look at that HR system update coming through. So again, ISO will have some visibility of what they think is happening, but again, it does have lag. It isn't as accurate as we would all think we could monitor the grid. But right now, what they're doing is that they've started asking all power generation facilities to start doing some manual reviews of their systems, validating that the systems are stable, seeing that they are in sync on at the right frequency of 60 hertz, plus or minus like 0.1%, and that that telemetry, the streaming of data to ISO is working, and that could also, looking at change management of the network. Did some of that telemetry get blocked?
Okay, David, from a dark trace perspective, hearing what you've heard so far, anything that you want to shed light on? I can see more information is rolling into me, but anything that you want to chime in with right now?
Yeah, some of it has been spoken by some of the other members in the panel. The first obvious thing is that if it was Montana, is that right? It's Montana, it's disconnected from us? Okay, so the cat's out of the bag. Not only is it out of the bag in Canada, it's out of the bag in the USA, so we can expect a bit of trouble coming from south of the border, because an incident that affects Canada is bad enough for us. But if it turns out that something's happened down there and it's traced back to Canada, woe betide us, okay, big time. So we need to get on this. What I'm already detecting is a bit of a siloed approach around the place. You'd expect that to begin with, but at some point we do need somebody to be in charge. And obviously the CTO is stuck in traffic or whatever. But I'm a little bit surprised that there's no deputy CTO or somebody to step in where we can take that particular position. Maybe somebody will. We'll see what actually happens. Look at that anomaly that happened in there. If everybody can remember when you saw the graph, prior to that anomaly, everything looks okay. After that anomaly, everything looks okay. But it is quite a jump, so it's certainly deserving of an investigation sooner rather than later. However, what I've just discovered from the chaos engineer is the actual grid has no ability for real-time monitoring of what's actually going on. So we're already in the position of being told what happened. But what we really need to be is in the position of knowing what's happening, and that doesn't seem to be the case right now. So that's a couple of problems there. The cat's out of the bag. There's no real-time visibility, and we haven't got anybody in charge. So it's a bit of a problem.
Paul, I can see that you were texting me a question, but I could not understand. It's something about updates. Do you want to share that? And perhaps Alex and Shrey can give us some context?
Yeah, so this is more of around the question to the SOC team. Do we have a confirmation of a work order in the system for authorizing the firmware update? Can we dig deeper into that firmware update, where the source of it was from? Is it external? Did it come through secure remote access? Was it on-prem?
Well, as per the information available at the moment, the firmware update was authorized. In fact, it was scheduled 2 weeks ago. Now, the question stands that whether the firmware update has the authorized patch or not. We are currently looking into it. There were a couple of logs which we noticed which should not be there. It suggests me something in the directions of log tampering in a particular way. But again, I don't want to add words to the discussion at the moment which should not be there.
Well, one question, Shrey. I'm aware that there was a big firmware update a couple weeks ago, but do we have logs saying that there was a secondary update?
That's the key I'm missing out on at the moment. The logic is the SHA which I found earlier on the main firmware update which was pushed out is different from the one which we authorized upon. Now this mismatch I am investigating further, and shortly I will have some visuals on it.
Okay, let's deploy a technician to site and follow ISO's request to do some manual review.
Okay. All right, James, at this point, are you in agreement with the idea of dispatching a manual, sort of a technician to site?
Absolutely. The visibility that we don't have right now is a cause for concern. So I would absolutely say so.
All right, well, a cause for concern, I'm going to make it into a mountain of concern because it's going to pop up on my screen right now. Our CEO has clearly woken up and seen the news, and an email has come through. And of course, I was the recipient of this email because all of you are busy trying to figure out what's going on. I know those who are online can see this clearly, but I will read it out and paraphrase to some extent. This comes from our CEO. He says, "Team, I'm currently out of country on vacation, I might add, but I'm seeing the reports on inverter instability and the Alberta interconnect issues. I need a clear view. Does this incident affect our data centers in any way? I need immediate clarity on 4 points," and I can assure you these 4 points have come directly from ChatGPT. I had to. Sorry, Alex, I had to. What's the current operational status of our AI data centers, power backup systems? Oh, the serial comma is right there. And any service degradation. Could the inverter compromise extend into our AI infrastructure? What containment measures are active to isolate? What's our recovery? Okay, this is a lot of questions, and there are questions that are coming up online from a few folks. Nurlan and Mamta have asked us questions. At this point, Alex, maybe you can guide me. Has there been an outage of any sorts, or are we just seeing anomalous activity?
No outages thus far. We are, responding to ASO's requests of starting to do an internal review of our systems. SOC is also doing some investigations of logs, trying to validate, trying to follow the breadcrumbs back on what changes have happened in the last 48 hours on our systems. And we will get back to you.
All right. Thank you. While you're doing what you're doing, yes, my friend from TELUS, Jean-François, please go ahead.
Thank you. At this point, I'd be very suspicious of the whole supply chain for inverters. A few questions. Are they all the same brand, same manufacturer, same?
Yeah,
everything?
CyberX Co. invested heavily in the last few years on this next generation. I think it's called Smart Inverter AI 2000, and it is very, very efficient, very it has a lot of predictive capability. So this was part of their strategy of really maximizing revenue out of power generation.
Okay.
Do we follow due process before updating, testing, and all that? Because that can have huge consequences on the grid if they get into a problem.
Yeah, certainly. No, we do definitely have very standardized protocols in terms of remote management, patching, and whatnot. We'll have an electrical engineer on staff during every one of those change windows.
Okay.
Varun, go ahead, and then David.
I have a question on the change management, the recent update that was made. If push comes to shove, is there a backout plan and we move back to the previous version of the update?
Again, this all primarily focuses upon the security aspects of it. I'll get in touch with the operations team and make sure we have a backup processes, and if not, then at least figure out the next steps for it.
Okay, David, please chime in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, hearing contradictory terms here. I'm hearing update and patch. Was this an update or was it a patch?
Right, so the patch released, which was primarily focusing upon the inverters, it was a minor update, that's what we call it. A couple of weeks ago, a CV was flagged for us, and for that a new version release was made. However, it did not make a significant changes, and hence the patch and update words were misused or misconfigured over here. But the logic is the patch was deployed. The firmware was updated based upon this patch.
Okay, you've mentioned CVEs, you've mentioned a whole bunch of things that are causing us even more anxiety. Rob, in your role as the CISO thus far, with everything that you've heard, you've been taking it all in and assessing the situation. We have a team of technicians that have been dispatched as well. Do you think your team's going down the right track, or are we missing the point here?
I think we need to be clear on a couple things, and there's two things happening that we need to be careful of. Number one is, particularly with the CEO's email, there's a jump to a conclusion there that, hey, this must be a security thing. We have to be careful with our team saying, hey, this is a security thing. Right now, we've got a grid oscillation we don't even know if it's coming from us yet, right? Somewhere on the grid. We did a patch. The firmware numbers may or may not match. We need to dig into those things, say, hey, did we do the right patch? But at this point, from a security perspective, I've deployed my SOC because they're good at log analysis to help the teams. We deployed somebody to go look at the site and see what's going on manually. We're at the issue where we've got an operational issue, potentially, with us or the grid. But we have to, guard against jumping to a conclusion that this must be a security incident until we get a little bit more information. Otherwise, we risk going down the wrong rabbit hole.
Okay, fair enough. From the team at the SOC, anything else that you would like to share with us? Any new updates that have come your way?
Nothing at the moment. And as Rob mentioned pretty clearly that we need to classify this to be an operational issue or a security issue. My team currently is investigating whether the security threats are related to this firmware update or is there anything operationally happening at the moment. But we'll keep on sharing updates as we receive them.
All right, Vivek from the board, we're going to be responding to the CEO. Is there anything else that the board would like to hear from us at this point as our teams are being dispatched?
No, I'm very pleased to hear that we're not jumping the gun and calling this a cyber incident at this stage. I think it's really important we don't create panic, not just in the citizens, but in our suppliers and partners and our investors. So I'm glad to hear that. It would be helpful to see a draft of the press release shared with the board as soon as possible, and confirmation of either where the CTO is or who his designate is going to be to step in, because we really need to get more frequent updates from the CTO team.
Okay, perhaps maybe if James or Alex, if one of you want to chime in, and we've got 3 questions of this nature. Do we know how long it will take to get to site for manual inspection? Should we set that expectation?
I think we should probably set that expectation, but we should also give a little bit of extra time just in case of contingencies.
Alex, what kind of contingencies are we looking at now?
ISO is going to want a report as soon as possible, so we need to start remotely connecting to our devices, pulling various stats, version, uptime, configurations, and whatnot, and then potentially deploying somebody on site if required.
Okay, I will tell you this, is that this media report is starting to circulate. There is more tension that's spreading. We are getting calls as well to our customer service line, so there are some concerns over here. Alex, again, I do need to ask you once more, and Varun, perhaps you can chime in here. The board has also sent us more notes saying, what is our level of risk if systems go down? Anything else that we need to consider from a risk perspective?
I'd probably look into what the vendor that we are using, is it supplying to other providers as well, just to understand the impact of the incident, not incident yet, but impact overall to the Alberta grid. So that's something that I'd like to understand.
Alex, can I ask you a very straightforward question? And I was trying not to bring this up, but I'm perhaps going to, and I'm going to go back to the media report because I have it listed here verbatim. Experts warn the grid is only resilient when interconnected, leaving Alberta vulnerable while isolated. Is there truth to this statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever you consume more power on the grid, it's going to slow down the generators. And when you reduce consumption, it speeds up the generators. Now that's a problem, right? The frequency of how fast those generators are spinning has to stay like within, I think 1% is extreme. So when you have a larger grid, you have this broader inertia that any absorption or generation of power can be absorbed across the entire grid, across all the spinning metal. Now that we've isolated, Alberta's been isolated to its own generation capacities, that drops the spinning metal down to maybe tens, not hundreds. So any fluctuation, either consumption, or generation of power would provide, could spin, or increase or decrease that frequency to a dangerous level. And that dangerous level, again, would then trigger lockouts or relay trips that would then either start isolating power plants or consumers like oil and gas facilities to protect the grid.
All right, I want to add on to this, and I think everyone could probably pay attention to this story, which will pop up on the screen as well. This story is available on ODTN.news as well. The story, which will pop up on your screen very, very shortly, talks about CyberX PowerCo modernizing Alberta with smart grid technology. I recommend everyone do take some time to review both these, to review this story, as it will reveal a lot about the extent to which CyberX PowerCo is involved, and multiple other businesses have dependencies on their operations. I am starting to, for everybody's knowledge, I am starting to get a ping from our SOC team very shortly, and I will come to you very shortly, SOC team, on what you're beginning to see. But I do want to turn back to you, David, just to ask you, is that from your perspective at this point of time, seeing what you're seeing, is there, we haven't yet declared this to be a cyber incident, it's still an operations concern. Is there risk in delaying how long we take to declare an incident?
I think it's still too early to declare it's a cyber incident, but there's certainly an incident, that's for sure. And Vivek was talking a few minutes ago about I want to see the draft of the press report. And I would urge we get on with that pretty quickly, because nature abhors a vacuum. And if we don't start telling people what's happened, other people will make up their own minds about this, and it won't be on our terms. And given that it's power, and that affects absolutely everybody, I think we need to get pretty much on that very, very quickly.
Okay. Rob, a question for you, which I'll read directly, that has come from our audience member, is has anyone even contacted the vendors of the AI inverters? We haven't spoken about that thus far. What are we missing here, Rob?
I think there's two things. I think most certainly from a operational perspective, the team has reached out to say, hey, we've got this mismatch of firmware numbers, which is the correct one from you. Which one should it be, so we can resolve that mismatch? So that communication with the vendor is happening on the sort of by somebody in the operational technology side to figure what's happening. From our perspective, I think hit on the head. There is a technology incident, but there's not a cybersecurity incident. So I think from my side, it's a couple things. It's monitor it and provide the support I can to the operational teams. So my SOC team is fully engaged. And then the other piece is starting to wind up on the threat intelligence side, which is there, reaching out to our friends in EISAC, the electricity ISAC, to say, hey, anybody else seeing anything weird? And that's North American wide. Reaching out to other partners, reaching out to the Canadian Cyber Centre, reaching out to the manufacturers, and starting monitoring things like additional terms in dark web monitoring and things to see if there's any indication of weirdness from an intelligence perspective. So that would be going out to my threat intelligence team as things to do while we're trying to figure out what this is.
Okay, I do have to chime in here very quickly. Jean-Francois, maybe I can give you this piece of information, then anybody from our chaos engineer to the rest of the SOC and James, if you want to chime in. Jean-Francois, we've just received a note that the team is experiencing some remote management issues as well. Are there any questions you now have based on this new piece of information?
Remote management, yes. First, the inverter is kind of a hint that something is not, something is wrong. We haven't talked about the network. We haven't talked about if these inverters are actually connected into any network, have external access or anything. And then we're starting to see instability that you just mentioned. Could be related, could not be related. It's hard to cry wolf at this point without the telemetry and everything. But yeah, I would turn to the SOC and see if they have anything to chime in, because it could be the early days of something much bigger. Yeah, I mean, breach, supply chain attack. I mean, and to get to the inverter probably would be helpful for nefarious group to gain network access, and from there they can do a lot of things. So, I mean, it's too early to tell for sure, but we need the telemetry, we need to look at the logs, and we need to look at the intelligence also to see if any other supplier of electricity or companies such as ours have seen anything out there, including the dark web. So, yep.
Alex, any context here?
Yeah, so our dashboards look good, but when we started logging in to do some manual show commands, we're not able to log in. So we're recommending getting a technician on site right now, and I'll pass it over to Shrey to show what we are seeing and scratch our heads why we see good data, but we can't validate that we're actually receiving good data.
Yep. If Shrey, if you can, before you just take over and you start to prepare your screen, these questions are now coming to us from multiple entities. I can see that there is some push internally also to begin conversations with other entities and other jurisdictions as well, which we haven't started yet. So, SOC team, Shrey, if you want to pop up your screen and walk us through what are some of the anomalies you're seeing now.
Yep, thank you, Ali. I'll address a couple of questions, starting with the first, supply chain. Rob, I can confirm and verify that the chain of custody for the supply chain of these inverters has not been breached. It is completely intact. The firmware updates which are being made right now, our team is investigating into it. The SHA mismatch that we discovered earlier was still speculation. It is still not confirmed. Once I have an update on that, I'll share more information. Now, coming back to the discussion of what we're looking on screen. As Alex mentioned earlier, there is a remote management interface issue. And that brings me to something which I have not seen before in my career over here. That, you know, I'm no energy expert, but I'm pretty sure that, hey, this energy, inertia and frequency stability, it should not look like this. The fluctuations are just to erupt in a way. Above 60 Hertz is fine, below 60 Hertz is fine, but the frequency of oscillation that I'm noticing at the moment is something I personally have never seen before. And on top of it, the load versus generation timeline, it's just, you know, abnormal in a way. These logs should not look like this, even if they are real, even if anomalies are there, even if there is disruption in power supply and generation loads and demands. These logs should never look like this, which brings me towards speculation that is there someone in the network or what's happening over here? That's what I'm investigating with my team at the moment. I don't want to add anything randomness to the conversations, but this is very random. This is not something normal. I really insist on deploying manual support to the
Well, Shrey, we are deploying manual support, but now we are getting more concerns. And listen, I appreciate you telling us that this looks very, very strange. Rob, any questions that you have right now for the SOC team or any direction that you can provide?
I think at this stage, it is weird. And it's concerning because for me, sort of my head in history goes back to something like a Stuxnet, where, you know, the visibility mismatched reality. And, you know, in that case, they didn't know what reality was until centrifuges started coming apart. I think the rush to get somebody on site to do a manual comparison will quickly tell us whether we're seeing it's a display issue or something just weird that we've never seen before is happening. So I'd want an ETA on that manual view, and then get that report back for comparison as a priority.
Varun, go ahead.
I'd like to know if we are facing remote management issues. Has the inverter been accessed by someone else in the past 24 hours apart from the authorized access?
Okay, we have about 12 minutes to go and information is steadily and quickly coming in. Alex, I can inform you that the technicians are on site. They will text me once they have some information that has come in. I'm going to take two critical questions that have come in from the chat, and I'll start off with Jacob's question, and whoever wants to take this one on, I'll read it verbatim. How can we expect this to affect the average Albertan if the grid has suffered a cybersecurity incident and we are cut off from the interconnected grid? Paul, can we start with you and maybe then close with Vivek?
Yeah, so in Alberta, we actually have a RAS system in place, so it's a remedial action schema. So as long as we don't have a total cascade turn down effect of all the substations, it shouldn't have a direct impact on the average Albertan. Now, the LSSI that occurs here too in Alberta is load shedding service. So some of the bigger providers, if this does go critical, have to actually turn down their systems. So they have to disengage from the grid to help protect it for average Albertans, and that's part of their contracts that they sign.
Okay. Vivek, from your perspective?
The board is seriously questioning the CEO and CTO adequacy and presence in this role. The importance of having that draft available for review is not just to release it, but it's even to question, should PowerCo even be releasing a statement, or should this be handled at a higher level with AESO? I'm hoping that, once the CTO is found or a new designate's assigned, that the manufacturer of the inverter's CEO is brought to the table to make sure they're involved early on. But this is really disappointing. I think the CEO's bonus is now in jeopardy, and whether or not we continue to keep him on the staff is a real question for us right now. It's been too long, and we haven't heard from either one. So, prepare to have discussions for succession planning.
All right, Vivek, look, I feel like the board is escalating way too quick. But Vivek, shouldn't the board know who was second in command when your CEO was away on vacation?
I asked that question already, and I have not had a good answer.
All right, fair enough. I'll try and find your responses to this. David,
thank you.
One of the notes that I'm getting is, look, AI didn't break any of this. We broke this. The system is broken because we trusted it. Does it look to you at this point that we don't necessarily have even backup plans in place because it hasn't been brought up yet?
Yeah, I'm slightly concerned about that. And the bit about, given all the oscillations that are happening, that some large organizations will have to scale back what they use. My concern is this include all the AI data centers that we have around Alberta, because they really do need an awful lot of power all the time. I echo what Vivek's just said there, that, and I've said it earlier on, and I'm going to say it again, who's in charge? We need somebody to take charge here at some point and break down a lot of the silos that are taking place, because otherwise they're just going to continue.
You do not want the board to step in on this?
I'm not saying I want the board to step in. I'm not saying what I really want is a big Scottish policeman to turn up and take charge, to be honest with you, until somebody else more suitable appears. But there we go.
All right, policeman with the kilt, done. I'm making the arrangements for that. There's a very powerful question that has just come in, and James, because why not? I'm going to throw this one at you while we hear back from our technicians. And maybe I'm being unfair when I'm throwing this at you, but I'm still going to do it. Michael asks, has anyone checked whether these inverters have manufacturer-installed cellular modems? Those are tiny and becoming more and more common in all kind of things. James, do you want to even explain what this question means?
It's getting more into the IoT side of things. It's getting more and more. We're looking at what's considered smart, really, and so they're looking at has something been added, whether it was by design or by design of the manufacturer. So something that we may need to look back into the manufacturer's spec and see what we did with it too.
Yeah, I think more and more we're beginning to see that there's some concern about these inverters now, and I have, David, on your suggestion, as well as Jean-Francois, on your recommendation in our previous discussions as well, I have tried to reach out to our threat intel partners to begin to understand a little bit more if they're seeing anything else. We have about 5-ish minutes to go, and Alex, I'm seeing your messages. The technical team has texted you. I am in no position to explain what's going on. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Is this from the technician on site?
Yeah.
All right. So the technician did email back, and he did find something that is a bit strange. Shrey, can you cue that screenshot? He sent it, just took a picture of it. And this is from one of the administrative interfaces on the panel.
Oh, we're good.
Rob, do we have enough indicators of compromise to go from weird to incident?
Well, I appreciate the ASCII art. It's been a while since I've seen some. There is enough here. And so, given the weird behavior we've seen and this appearing, That is enough for a couple things to happen at this point. And the first is, as a CISO, I am declaring it a cyber incident, potentially. And that is important because if you wait too long to call it an incident once you have evidence of it, you can't start your incident response plan until there's an incident to respond to. Now, important to note, the word I'm not using is the capital B word, which is breach. I can't call that. The only one who can, and all your chief counsels now owe me a beer for telling you, but only your chief counsel with the board's approval can declare a breach. That's a legal determination. Incident is weird stuff is happening that we don't like. And we hit that bar that we think might be of cybersecurity origin. That does two things. Our incident response plan means the incident manager, in this case because it's potentially large as me, is actually in charge. So that means I can now take over from briefing the board. I own all the action planning, and all those actions now start to roll up to me, including intelligence. So this will help fill that power vacuum of the missing CTO. And so I'll step into that, and the first thing we'll do is two things. Incident response team is formed out of all these groups, including the risk, the SOC team, the technical teams investigating report up. I'll release a update to the board that is, here's what we know so far, and this is the conclusion we're under, potentially that somebody has externally tampered with our inverters, and we're investigating. And most importantly for the board, I'll tell them the next update is in 1 hour's time. So they know when to expect updates so that Vivek can get off my back on when the next update is here's what we know so far, here's the conclusions made, and your next update is in an hour. So they at least know what to expect. The other one is reaching out to corporate comms and drafting some holding statements. We don't know yet the source, what's happened, but once we confirm it's an incident, it's ours, we need to quickly get out a holding statement to say, hey, here's what's happening. So we're going to get that drafted now and get that ready to approve and released if we need it. So somebody just has to click send versus figure it out.
Thank you. And Alex, can you please text those technicians on site? I just saw one of the co-ops take a screenshot and share it in the team WhatsApp group, which should not be happening at this point. This can circulate. We haven't issued any messages at this point of time. I need to control and contain this as much as possible. Rob, thank you for your perspective there. We're about 3 minutes to our closing over here. I'm going to turn to Jean-Francois first. Jean, anything that you want to add to this right now?
No, I think we're doing everything we can. Communication with other groups is super important, like our board member just said. We need to gather up evidence and continue what we're doing and work cohesively as a team and share all the information that we have.
Alex, I think at this point, I'm starting to look out if we're getting any reports of outages. I'm going to turn to your team to reconfirm that. But at this point, impact assessments, any plans for that?
Yeah, so there's no impacts right now, minus that we're not able to manage our critical infrastructure. So power is being generated, it's being provided to the grid, but obviously now that Rob has declared an incident, that means that we can start going through our task list. So first things first is we want to understand what's impacted and the criticality of those assets. Now, one problem that it's been something that I know has been a thorn in Rob's butt is that the OT management network is a flat /16. So all of our network, all of our generation facilities, including the power management systems of the AI data centers, are on the same network. That is going to make some challenges down the road for containment, but it also impacts our ability to have visibility because none of that traffic is going through firewalls and thus there are no logs. But we do have dark trace in the environment and that might be able to give us some visibility.
Listen, Alex, I'm going to say what I learned in security school, and that is you don't find a compromise, you admit it. And based on what we've heard about previous attacks, we've heard Stuxnet referenced a few times. We've heard in the notes that we're seeing in our private group, the Iberian blackout as well. There's a lot of indication here that we've been compromised, and perhaps due to our own negligence as well. So I am putting you on notice that things are going to get very, very dangerous for us at this point, and our advisory board is coming in more than just Vivek with a lot more questions. So please stay tuned for this. Shrey, from your side, any reports of have you got any notices from anyone of any outages or anything else that you want to add at this point?
At the moment, no worry. We already have a lot to deal with. The on-site engineers are currently working on solving this issue. Couple of inverters whose access was lost through remote management, that is still the case at the moment. We are trying to figure out what can we do at the moment. We don't have a playbook for this thing. We'll just see what can happen.
Yeah, we'll just see what can happen. Interesting. Vivek, that's my team right now.
Okay, I have one urgent matter. Like, can we get some good espresso here? We're hunkering down, and this instant coffee is not going to cut it. Please order something decent.
All right. Well, besides your order for espresso and a couple of requests coming in for vodka, I think we are coming very quickly in the next 2 minutes to a conclusion. I am going to add that at this point, we are in a situation where an incident has been declared. The scope and the impact of this incident is to be determined, but from a detection and an analysis standpoint, I'll turn it over once more to Alex just to summarize. What have we detected? Where are we at before we transition into our next module?
All right, well, what started as a trigger from our grid reliability coordinator to look at our stuff, we started looking at it and realized we couldn't look at it. We were unable to remotely manage it. So we have sent a technician on site who observed that the little LED screen or LCD screen had a malicious splash screen on it. And now we're going to need our technicians to do a little bit more diagnosis on that while we start considering who we need to communicate to and what we need to do to start understanding the full depth and breadth and how to contain.
One other thing, I think, Alex, as we go through this, one of the items in our incident response plan that we need to pay attention of is our tactical priorities. And in this case, for our company, we've determined our number one tactical priority is safe generation of electricity to the grid, because that's what keeps our license to operate intact. The question for the team is, given our, and that I need to know the answer to, is given our inability to manage remotely and monitor remotely, do we feel we're in a state where we're providing safe power to the grid, or do we need to reach out to AESO and let them know we're disconnecting? Because if we can't do it safely, we need to step out. And so that's a question for the technical team that's evaluating this, is an assessment of, are we generating safe power right now?
All right, I will bring that into our impact assessment as well. Rob, thank you for that. We are about a minute and a half away from our close. I have received another note saying, folks, based on that image that we saw from one of the sites, the humor of the potential attacker reminds them of Hellcats, and somebody is signaling to something that happened with Schneider in 2024. This raises quite a lot of concern for me at this point. I've always believed this, that detection is kind of the easy part. Believing it isn't. Let's see what is to unfold as we move forward into the next modules. As we transition into the next modules, I want to firstly thank all of you for joining us for Module 1, especially those that are watching online. Module 1 has come to a conclusion at this point, and Module 2 will begin at 10:55. I invite all of you to take some time, follow the volunteers, where you can grab some coffee, some snacks, and also interact at the sponsors area as well. We will begin promptly at 10:55 a.m., but I will throw in a little bit of a curveball. While this attack or this incident has begun in the morning, at 10:55 a.m. MST, we will be in the evening hours of this incident, and it will begin to escalate as we move into the containment phase. Thank you all very much, and thank you, panelists, for being fantastic in acting this out. See you in 35 minutes-ish. Thank you.